How's it going, everybody? It's Catfish on Ice, episode 246, live edition with your host, Chad Minton. Thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube or Facebook right now, hit the subscribe button below if you'd like. Preds Training Camp is officially underway starting today. It's been a long offseason, a crazy offseason. So much has happened, and we're finally here. We're going to get to see the Preds on the ice in practice drills, getting ready for preseason to start this weekend with a doubleheader against the Florida Panthers. Here's what I got in store for you today on episode 246, presented by BetterHelp and also presented by DraftKings with our promo codes THPN. I got my list of my top 10 team MVPs going into the season. These are my top 10 players ranked accordingly on who I think are most important to this team if they're going to reach their ultimate goal of having more than just making it to the playoffs. Obviously, with what Barry Trotz has done this offseason, this team's got to show so much more once it gets into the playoffs. And I think we all realize that. So these are going to be my top 10 players who I think are the most valuable to this team in order if this franchise is going to finally, for the first time in 6 years, make it past the first round of the playoffs, going all the way back to 2018 when the Preds knocked out the Avalanche in the first round. Was the last time the Preds went past the first round in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Obviously, we have even higher expectations that we want to see this team make a Western Conference final. I have said previously this offseason that after the moves they made for Stamkos and Brady Shea and Jonathan Marchessault, and just looking at this roster on paper, this team needs more than just a first-round playoff win. I think this team's got at least Western Conference Finals appearance written all over it. That's got to be the top realistic goal. If you ask me, the measuring stick. If you don't say the easy answer of, oh yeah, we want to win a Stanley Cup. If you don't say that easy answer, I think Western Conference Finals appearance is my benchmark for me, where I would leave happy and satisfied as a fan that what they did this offseason culminated in the ultimate results. This franchise has only made the Western Conference Finals once. We always get lost on the Stanley Cup final appearance in 2017, but only that same season is the only time the Predators have ever even made it to a conference finals. With all of that playoff, with all of that regular season success, with all of those playoff appearances, that is a tough pill to swallow. Also got to get into the latest contract news. Finally, they take it to the doorstep of training camp to finally get Philip Tomasino a contract. And we kept asking ourselves, what is taking so long here? I mean, it couldn't have been that complicated of a deal. We kept speculating that a trade was going to happen. So we got to talk about that, as Philip Tomasino is indeed staying with the Predators. I know a lot of fans out there are really happy about that. They love Philip Tomasino. They believe in him for the long-term future. And the complete episode 246 will be released tomorrow, Friday afternoon. I've got a guest joining me tomorrow morning. Keener jerseys, some of the best customizable jerseys in the league. They actually have a partnership with the Predators. The founder of that company, Keener, is going to be joining me as a guest tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. That will be in the full audio version on the podcast platforms for episode 246. And will also be on YouTube as well to watch that interview on its own. So can't wait to have Keener join Catfish on Ice. It's going to be a lot of fun talking about the customizable jerseys, which is such a big deal among fans. The younger generation of fans love those customized jerseys. They're so cool. And so, yeah, going to be fun there. But that's what we got in store for you here. First thing I want to get into today, since training camp has just begun, is do we have any position battles to talk about with this Preds team? Because I feel like in a lot of ways, this roster is pretty set in stone right now. Yeah, you kind of look at the projected starting lineup now that Philip Tomasino is re-signed. He's kind of the final piece that we were waiting to see what was going to happen there, because that ripple effect, if he didn't come back, was going to mean, okay, we got some open spots here. But now that he's back, you expect him to for sure be the extra skater night in and night out, and then get starts when is necessary. But that's the first position battle I got to look at is Philip Tomasino. He's on that fringe of being a opening night starter or being an extra skater, being a healthy scratch to open the season. So he's got to really really showcase his talents and his ability to fit into the Andrew Burnett ultra aggressive style system in training camp. Because right now, when you look at the overwhelming majority of sites out there projecting the Preds lineup and writers and analysts alike, they leave Philip Tomasino out of the starting lineup. They instead put Juuso Parssinen in there, who also just got a new contract not too long ago, getting less money than Philip Tomasino. But, of course, we know Philip Tomasino has the higher ceiling, of course, with his talent level, so shouldn't be too big of a shock there. But both of those guys get one-year deals, kind of prove-it deals like we like to call them. But when it comes to Tomasino, he's got a lot to gain in this training camp now that he's got this contract. He's playing for a starter's role. He's playing for a spot in the lineup, starting lineup. So he is going to be naturally the number one player I'm going to be watching to see what he does in training camp and in preseason. Because a lot of people can say that Tomasino has been a little mistreated in his time in Nashville. He just hasn't gotten the adequate ice time. He hasn't played with the best line mates all the time. But when he's out there, he produces. He puts points on the board. So I think for Tomasino, it's not the talent that's in question. It's not even the point production that's in question. It's the intangibles, I'm afraid, that he's got to really prove something different to Andrew Burnett and the coaching staff during this training camp. He's got to have that dog in him. He's got to be willing to play the hard, rugged minutes that Andrew Burnett requires to get regular playing time on this team. And I always wonder why it took so long to get this deal done. I just think that maybe Tomasino was holding out for more money and it didn't work out. Maybe they were waiting to see if a trade would come along and it never facilitated. And so ultimately both sides decided, it's best for us to stay together for one more year and let's see what happens. Another position battle is going to be focused on the defensive side of things. And that's, of course, Dante Fabro. Can he play his way into the starting lineup instead of being the seventh defenseman? And, I was watching NHL Network the other day, and they gave out their projected starting lineup for the Predators, and it was a little bit different than what some of the other websites have put out there. And so the way they put the defensive corps for the Predators is from NHL Network. They actually have Roman Josi and Alexander Carrier as your top pairing defensemen, Brady Shea and Dante Fabro as your second pairing defenseman, and Jeremy Lauzon and Luke Schenn as your bottom pairing defenseman, with Spencer Stastny being the seventh defenseman. I have not seen anyone come out with that type of Preds defensive pairing combinations. And it's kind of got me a little intrigued here. Everyone assumed that the free agency acquisition of Brady Shea would put him on a top pairing with Roman Josi, and you just have your two best defensemen right up there up at the top. And that they were going to keep Lauzon and Carrier together because they had so much success last year. Arguably I would say they were the most efficient and consistent defensive pairing on the Preds last year. So why would you want to break that up? And then your third pairing was a little bit more in question, but a lot of people don't think that Dante Fabro should be on the third pairing either. So he's kind of the odd man out. So they were thinking Stastny and Luke Schenn, who also had some time playing together and did all right, would be the third pairing. But this one from NHL Network is pretty interesting, where they put Fabro on the second pairing with Shea and Carrier on the top pairing with Josi. I mean, it could have some weight. I mean, I do think that Burnett's got a lot to figure out with his defensive pairings during this training camp to see what works the best. I don't think it's set in stone at all when it comes to the defensive pairings to see who plays best with Josi, who has that instant chemistry. Where does Brady Shea fit in all this? Where does he fit best immediately? And do you find a way to get Dante Fabro in there if he has a really strong training camp? And maybe Stastny doesn't have a strong training camp. And since Stastny is on a two-way deal, you can be a lot more flexible with what you do with Stastny this season. Because if you remember, he got the 2-year deal this offseason, with the first year being a two-way deal. So that's big time there because you got that flexibility with Stastny. So that's another position battle that it's going to have to be really watched closely is how the defensive pairings are sorted out, because I think that's very much a fluid situation. And then finally, going back to the Preds forwards, of course, we got to talk about Steven Stamkos. And not that he's so much in a position battle, but where is the best place to put him, center or wing? Everyone thinks he's going to play on the left side, left wing on the second line with Tommy Novak centering and with Jonathan Marchessault on the right wing. That makes the most logical sense. But sometimes what is most logically clear doesn't always happen, because things happen in training camp that you don't expect. And so again, Tommy Novak is going to have to really impress and give the coach the confidence to coaches that he's ready to take on a prominent second line center role, playing with Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos. That's a lot of pressure. He's probably got the most pressure on the entire team this season facing him is Tommy Novak. So about to talk a little bit more about Tommy Novak when I get into my top 10 MVPs here. But yes, that is for sure going to be the most interesting training camp position battle. Is if Tommy Novak, for whatever reason, does not show enough to be that second line center, then you have to jumble a lot of things around. Then you start thinking about Luke Evangelista. Where does he go? And you're thinking about, does Stamkos take the second line center role? What does that mean for the rest of the lineup? It changes a lot if Novak is not ready to win that role. And I don't think it's going to be handed over to him on a silver platter. He's got to earn it in training camp. So those are my three players really in three areas of the lineup to watch the closest is Tomasino. Can he earn his way into the starting lineup? Dante Fabro, and to a bigger extent, the entire defensive corps. How does that get sorted out? Who plays on the top pairing with Roman Josi? And then, of course, the second line center role with Tommy Novak. Those are my top three position battles as training camp is officially underway for the Predators. Fun stuff. Preseason's coming up. Of course, the Predators just had their rookie showcase, and the prospects was fun. It was fun to finally see some hockey. You got Pete Weber on the call, play-by-play for the games, which was some nostalgia. Love hearing the GOAT, Pete Weber. And I thought the prospects looked really good. I mean, it's really hard to take too much out of it because it's peers. It's just your peers playing against other peers. But you get to, for the first time, see some of these prospects. You get to see these underdog players who are playing for roles on the Milwaukee Admirals this year, possibly. You got guys in the rookie showcase who are being invited to Predators training camp on professional tryouts, including Easton Armstrong, who scored 2 goals in the final period when the Preds got the finale win of the showcase against the Carolina Hurricanes prospects. So just fun underdog stories like that are always good. You got to see a little bit of Fedor Shvechkov in the rookie showcase. You got to see a Joakim Kimmel in there and showcasing his crazy shot that he possesses. Zachary Leroux was out there. Tanner Molendyke really stood out at the rookie showcase. His skating is unreal. His transition game, you saw that on full display. He scored a goal in the showcase, was on the power play unit. So that was cool. So you're just seeing a first glimpse at some of the most recent draft picks by the Predators in the last couple of drafts. And then some seasoned prospects as well, like Zachary Leroux, who is out there as a possible top prospect who could somehow just completely light it up at training camp and make it onto the Preds roster. I just don't see that happening. I don't see how beneficial it would be for him to immediately start the season on the NHL lineup when he still is only going into his second season of professional hockey. He just completed his rookie year in the AHL. So I think it would do him much better to start the season in Milwaukee. But he is, of course, considered one of the top next man up, if you will, to get out of the prospect pool and possibly get his NHL debut this season. So he was at the rookie showcase. You got our first look at Magnus Krona, who was the goalie prospect who came over in the Yaroslav Askarov trade. Faced some really difficult shots, didn't get the best defense in front of him. Don't think it's a totally fair assessment, but he did have a little bit of a rough showcase in terms of being able to stop all these pucks. But again, the defense isn't always as crisp, and the fundamentals are sometimes a little lacking in these showcase games because all these prospects are playing together for the first time. So a lot of times it's the defense in front of the goaltender that kind of falls to the wayside a little bit. So I'm not going to really judge Magnus Krona too much on the goals that he gave up. But altogether, it was a really strong showing from the Preds rookies, the prospects, as they win 2 of 3 games in that. So let's move along here. Episode 246 on YouTube and Facebook with your host, Chad Minton, part of the Hockey Podcast Network, presented by BetterHelp and DraftKings with promo codes THPN. I'll tell you more about those sponsors here in a second, but I want to first get into my top 10 MVPs for the Preds going into the season, the most valuable players, preseason style going into the season, who are the most critical players to this Predators lineup. And I just mentioned him. Let's first start with Tommy Novak. I got him at number 10 on my top 10 MVPs for the Predators going into the season. He cracks the list. He's important. He's obviously important because of where they expect him to be in the lineup. There he is right there. Number 10, Tommy Novak. I got him at number 10 because he's going to be, we really need him to stick on that second line center role. We need him to hold that position down because everything else will just fall into place if Novak seizes that role. And I'm really excited to see how Novak can be a puck distributor because he's shown that he is a really good puck distributor. He's good at dissecting the defense, making the guys around him better. And what better 2 players to play with than Jonathan Marchessault and Steven Stamkos? He should be able to pile up the assist numbers this year, maybe even get some looks. I would put him on the second power play unit most likely. So let's see what he can do there. But the table is set for Novak to have a breakout type year in terms of points and assist for this team, and it's right there for him to take and seize. So I got him at number 10 on my MVPs. It's Tommy Novak for sure. And of course, with Tommy Novak being there at number 10, let's move along here to the next player on my list, and that's number 9, and that is Alexander Carrier. Of course, a lot of people were not even too sure if Alexander Carrier was going to be back on this team. I mean, it was looking not good when he hit unrestricted free agency. A lot of fans were very critical of that he was that he was not dealt at the 2024 trade deadline. That was the biggest issue there, was that he was not dealt at the trade deadline. And it was viewed as a big gamble by a lot of outsiders when they thought, okay, we are not going to trade Carrier. We're going to hold on to him, treat him like a short-term rental, because the Preds were pushing for the playoffs. And so they thought, we can't afford to lose someone important to the defense like Carrier. Carrier had a great season. I mean, his defensive metrics looked really, really good. And so he was playing alongside Jeremy Lauzon, as I mentioned earlier, and they just put up such consistent metrics as a pairing. And so it was going to be really difficult pill to swallow. And it would have hurt this team in the short term if the Predators would have let go of Alexander Carrier. It would have been really, really difficult to happen there. So there's Alexander Carrier at number 9. And I think he's poised to almost like Novak, but in a different way. He's poised to have a really strong year. We're going to have to see where they put him. Just talked about it in the opening segment about the defensive pairings and sorting all those out. Is he with Lauzon again for a repeat? Do they keep that chemistry together? Or does Carrier, like NHL Network was saying, does he get top pairing minutes with Roman Josi? I'm really going to have to watch for that closely, because I would maybe have to put him higher than number 9 on my MVPs if he ended up playing on the top pairing with Roman Josi. That would be crazy. So there's Alexander Carrier at number 9. Let's move along here. On my top 10 MVPs, I got Gus Nyquist at number 8. Gus Nyquist had a revival of a year in his first year with the Predators. I was one of those guys that really didn't get all that excited about the signing originally of Gus Nyquist. I just thought, I was very just indifferent about it. I just didn't think too much of it. I thought, okay, he could be a decent veteran role model type of player. I didn't see the type of season he was about to have, though. I mean, just put up insane numbers that I just couldn't have expected from Nyquist, and playing on the top line and seeing how that top line with Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly just completely carried this team at certain points in the season. I mean, really for almost the entire season. I mean, when the top line didn't produce, the Preds usually lost. It was just that simple. But Gus Nyquist played in 81 of the 82 games, 75 points, 52 assists, made his impact on the power play with 19 power play assists. We saw how that power play top unit just completely feasted. So Nyquist, my co-host Max Greenberg, he is very skeptical that the Nyquist will be able to do this again, and I'm right there with him. I don't think he's going to have quite a 75-point season, which is why I kind of bump him back on the top 10 MVPs list to number 8. Is he is going to be a top line player, so you might push back on me that he should be higher since he's a top line player. But I put him at number 8 because he's still obviously really important. You need him to come at least very close to the same type of production if he's going to be on the top line for the Predators again. But I just think that it's going to be really difficult for him to do that again. I mean, he's now 35 years old, just turned 35. So he's getting up there. Now, age is just a number. I get that. But Father Time is also undefeated. So let's see what he can do there at the number 8, at the top line spot again, which we totally expect will be the case. And can they do a repeat performance? I think you know that the rest of the Preds top line is coming up on my MVP list. So don't even worry about that. Number 7 for me is a newcomer on the team. Brady Shea is my number 7 top MVP of the team. He is I'm very critical of the amount of years that Shea is getting. The 7 years has me a little nervous, I won't lie. But I have come around on it. I've seen what some Hurricanes fans have to say about it, and they love it. They love Brady Shea. Again, we're going to have to wait and see where he ends up. If he does, in fact, end up on the top pairing with Yossi, or do they put him on the second pairing with someone else? But you get yourself another offensive producer at the defense, at the blue line. Brady Shea's got a great shot. I'm excited to see Brady Shea on the second power play unit. What we forget is last season, the Preds' second power play unit really struggled. It was really all on the top unit to produce last year. And so you really need the second power play unit to pick up some slack here if the Preds power play is indeed going to get into the top 10 power plays, which I think they should absolutely be in the top 10 now that they got Stamkos and Marchessault. But Brady Shea is another power play booster. Not to the same level as those other two guys, but Brady Shea's got a heck of a blue line shot. So, and he's smart, and he's a two-way guy. He's smart in his own end as well. So I got him at number 7 on my top 10 MVPs for the Predators. It's Brady Shea. He's starting that 7-year deal at $7 million AAV. I just keep forgetting how crazy this offseason has been and how busy Barry Trotz was with adding all of these guys in the offseason. But I think Brady Shea is easy to overlook in how important he's going to be to this blue line. He really solidifies what is on paper, a really impressive and deep and balanced Preds D-Corps now that Brady Shea's in here. So he's my number 7 top 10 MVP there is Brady Shea. All right, let's move along here. Number 6, another newcomer. Jonathan Marchessault is my number 6 MVP for the Predators going into the season. Everyone expects him. Not too much drama. He's probably going to be on the second line at the right wing position. He's another one of those guys that has that dog in him. He plays that way that Andrew Burnett loves. This guy is all gas, no brakes. He's going to bring a certain intensity level to this team that it needs. I look at Marchessault, and he's the type of guys you need to win playoff series. And, Barry Trotz said today to the local media that this team needs to win a playoff series again, because once you get past the first round, that's when things get real. That's when things happen. That's when you build the chemistry. That's when you can go on a run. We remember it in 2017. And that's why they went out and got guys like Jonathan Marchessault, was because of this. Because they need dogs that can win in the first round of the playoffs, win 7-game playoff series. And so as important as is he going to be to the regular season, obviously, once you get in the playoffs, having a Jonathan Marchessault is going to be incredibly valuable. So that's why I got Jonathan Marchessault at number 6 on my top 10 MVPs. All right, we're going to move along here with my MVPs with number 5, and that is Ryan O'Reilly. And there might be a little bit of disagreement with some people out there that I'm putting Ryan O'Reilly ahead of Jonathan Marchessault. But the full expectation is that Ryan O'Reilly is going to be on the top line center role again. So I have to put him higher than Marchessault because he is a top line center. And he was, this whole thing got started. The Barry Trotz era got started by going out and getting Ryan O'Reilly. And then afterwards, Gus Nyquist. But I almost, with all the madness of this offseason, I keep forgetting, the Preds also got Ryan O'Reilly, who just completely blew up on the power play, just put up so many power play goals last year to help reverse course on this power play that's been pretty bad, historically speaking, recently. And it made a big improvement, got into the top half of the league, around the middle of the league in power play success rate, thanks to Ryan O'Reilly's leadership. And captain-like material, we're going to need him to replicate that again for sure with Philip Forsberg and Gus Nyquist. So easy choice for me to put Ryan O'Reilly ahead of Marchessault for that reason, even though Marchessault might have a more productive year. He might put up more stats. He might hit more highlight reels. I still think that O'Reilly is the more valuable player slightly to this team. Because you lose O'Reilly, then there's a lot to figure out with this lineup because him being your top line center, that would be bad. So that's why I got to put him at number 5 and put him slightly ahead of Marchessault, just slightly. It's really razor thin and close, but All right, I'm going to finish out the rest of my top 10 MVPs, but before I do that, got to tell you about our first sponsor of the day, and that is, of course, BetterHelp. Right now, you got to figure out a way to get your priorities in order and look out for you. Look out for you. It's so easy for that to not happen because of everything going on in life. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to forget what your own personal boundaries and priorities are. What's something you'd love to learn as an adult? Do you make time to learn new things as often as you'd like? Or was that lost in childhood, finding hobbies that make you happy, finding things that you're passionate about? Those are so important. But kids are always learning and growing. But as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn? Gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling. Bragging rights there, people. Bowling. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. And it doesn't take a personal traumatic event to get the benefits from online therapy. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma or other life-altering events that can throw you into a tailspin. It can be just normal day-to-day life where online therapy can really help you out and help you set the perspective of what's going on in your life. It's personally helped me, I can tell you that. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient and suit that busy schedule that we all have. We got to get the kids to soccer practice. We got to find time to do that big work project. We got to find time to run the errands, to do the laundry, to do all the things. And there's just not enough time in the day. You get 24 hours in a day. You got to get the adequate sleep. So sometimes it's hard to just lose track of everything. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. That's HELP.com/THPN for that offer that we have right now to give online therapy a try. All right. Awesome stuff there. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring the show. Really appreciate you there. All right. Next up on our top 10 MVPs, I've reached number 4. Let me give you a recap real quick. Number 10, I had Tommy Novak, who is poised to seize that second line center role, at least we hope. Number 9, we got Alexander Carrier, who, of course, surprisingly came back to the team after hitting unrestricted free agency. There's even some talk from NHL Network analysts that he could be the top pairing defenseman with Roman Josi. I'm a little skeptical of that, but it could happen. A lot to figure out in training camp. Gus Nyquist is my number 8 MVP of the team. Let's see if he can replicate what he did last year. 75 points. Now he's 35 years old, just turned 35, but he figures to be on the top line again, so we'll see. Number 7 MVP, I got Brady Shea, the newcomer. Number 6, I got Jonathan Marchessault, playing that second line role that seems pretty set there. I don't think there's any movement there. That's hit the best spot for him. Number 5, I've got Ryan O'Reilly, who is going to be the top line center again. And finally, it got really difficult once I got into the top 4. Let me just be totally honest with you. It got really difficult once I got to number 4. And this is like, I mean, take your pick on who you think out of these, but this is just how I'm ranking them. Number 4, I am actually going to put Philip Forsberg as my number 4 ranked MVP, which sounds crazy to me to even think about that after what he just did last year, 90-plus point season. I know, but that just shows you why a lot of people are excited about this team on paper and thinking they could even make a long run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's because this team looks so good on paper. And that's why I got to put Forsberg at number 4, because I think you see where I'm going with this. They got other guys. They got other guys that are also equally valuable to this team. But I'm going to put Forsberg at number 4 on my MVPs list. And I'm really interested to see what he is about to accomplish. Can he do another 90-point season? Is he finally in that elite category of NHL wingers? That's what I am interested in finding out this season. There he is, Philip Forsberg, number 4 on my MVPs list. The guy just keeps showing that he's better and better, and just really excited to have him around and see what he can produce. Again, he's still in the prime of his career. He's second on the all-time points list for the franchise for the Predators, only behind Roman Josi. And he's going to probably keep the band together with O'Reilly and Nyquist. I don't see any reason to break up that chemistry unless you have to, unless something happens where they're just not producing at the same level they were last year. But this was the most efficient Preds top line in team history. You absolutely have to bring that line back and give them a chance to do it again from game 1 of the season. Despite all of the moves you made in free agency, you still got to have that. But that's why I got him at number 4, Philip Forsberg there. All right, let's move along here to my number 3 MVP, and it is, of course, the newcomer on the team, the big prize possession that the Predators made, and that is Steven Stamkos. He is my number 3, and I went back and forth. I flip-flopped on this between Forsberg and Stamkos. Should Stamkos be number 4? Should Forsberg be number 3? But I ultimately settled on putting Stamkos at number 3, and here is my overwhelming reason why. You really went out and made this huge acquisition, and if for some reason it flops and he God forbid he suffers an injury and misses a bunch of games, or something happens, that's going to really set this team back. It's going to be a big psychological bruise on what's going on here, and it's going to really mess a lot of things up. Now, I'm not saying that the same wouldn't happen if it happened to Forsberg. It would, but I think Stamkos is slightly more valuable because if he is able to do what he did in Tampa this past season, those same types of numbers, I mean, how are you going to beat this team? This team's going to be tough to beat no matter who they're playing against, And a lot of people just seem to think that Stamkos isn't going to be able to remain on the same high-end level that he was with the Lightning. They think he's going to take a step back in his production after joining the Predators. And that's just a lot of outsiders are skeptical. But last season, Stamkos put up 81 points, 40 goals, 41 assists, played in 79 of 82 games. That right there is underappreciated. You're talking about a 34-year-old guy 34-year-old guy who played in 79 of 82 games. I mean, that is really impressive. He's still got it, even though he's definitely aging and father time does eventually catch up to you. But put up 81 points last year. Now, that's playing with guys like Kucherov and Braden Point and Victor Hedman. But the Predators got some good guys as well. And that's what I keep telling people is they think that he can't translate it to the Preds. But yeah, the Lightning have all those great players. The Predators got some damn good players as well. And I think Stamkos is going to feast on the Preds power play and everything's going to be fine. Now, his 5-on-5 might definitely take a step back. I mean, that's totally fair to say. I think the overwhelming majority of his damage is going to be done on the power play. That's no mystery. And let's see if he can actually stay relevant as a 5-on-5 player as well. But ultimately, his measuring stick is going to be what does he do on the Preds power play. All right, down to the nitty gritty here now. Of course, there's only two other players I could have left, right? Number 2, I've got the captain, Roman Josi, as the most valuable player. I've got him ahead of Forsberg and Stamkos because he is the captain. He is the top pairing defenseman. He does so much for this team. He hasn't regressed at all as he's gotten older. If anything, he's just aged like fine wine, and he's just stayed steady and constant. But I've got Roman Josi at number 2. He's still arguably a top 5 defenseman in the NHL. If not top 5, he's definitely top 10. He's consistently put around number 5 or number 6, sometimes number 4 among all these rankings that you see come out during the offseason. But he's got to be my number 2 MVP on the team just because he plays such an important role that's so hard to replace. You can find, you lose Josi for 10 games. It's going to be way harder to replace that than if you lose Forsberg for 10 games, or even if you lose Stamkos for 10 games. I think you can put a Band-Aid on it and maybe keep your head above water. You lose Roman Josi for 10 games, it's going to be a lot harder, a lot more difficult to replace that and fix that. So I got him at number 2. And my number 1 MVP of the team, it's still UC Saros. I mean, and here's why. Not only because he plays goalie, but because if Saros can finally cash in on his first Vezina trophy and he puts up those types of numbers that we saw Pekka Rinne do at times, this team really is going to be almost unbeatable if it ends up being UC Saros if he bounces back. He had by ordinary standards, his season wasn't that bad last year, but by his high expectations and what people expect of UC Saros being a Vezina caliber goalie, yeah, he had a down year last year for sure, especially in the goals saved above expected. He was very ordinary. He didn't steal as many games as we've become accustomed to when he does. He didn't bail out the Predators nearly as much as we're accustomed to. Now, hopefully, with Stamkos and these other guys, and the Predators figuring to be a much higher scoring team, hopefully Saros won't have to bail out this team nearly as often as he had in the past. But with that said, he is my top 10 MVP bar none because, for one, you lose him and then suddenly you're back to being one of those franchises that we see out there currently today that are just freaking out and struggling to find goalies. And it's just Saros is so important. That's why they brought him back. That's why they re-signed him instead of trading him when they definitely could have traded him and gotten a pretty decent return. But ultimately, they decided to hitch their wagon to him long-term, 8 years. He's still going into the final year of his current deal where he's only $5 million per year. But the new contract will kick in after this season. But he's my number 1 MVP. I mean, if he puts up Vezina trophy numbers, on top of the fact that the Preds are going to have a much better power play, they should have much better scoring. They should be a much consistently higher scoring team. I mean, that's a 1-2 punch right there. Pick your poison. Are you going to get beat the old school way of the goalie stealing it from you and you get 30, 35 shots on net, but you're only able to score 1 or 2 goals? Or are you going to lose in the track meet style games of 5-4, where each power play goes tit for tat, and maybe Saros has an off night? Either way, this team's going to be hard to beat. But I got Saros as my number 1 MVP because if he shows out and he puts up Vezina worthy numbers, how are you going to beat this team on a consistent basis? This team is going to have really high high probability of going deep in the playoffs if they've got all that clicking at once. Big if, of course. So that's my top 10 MVPs there going into the season. Do with it as you will. Hit the comment section here on YouTube or on Facebook, or hit us up at Catfish Ice and give me your top 10 MVPs or your top 5 or what you think about my list. It's totally subjective, all right? I love doing the subjective list, but those are my top 10 MVPs for the Predators going into the season. All right, going to move along here in episode 246 of Catfish on Ice to quickly break down the Philip Tomasino deal coming in at 800 and let's see, got it right here. Coming in at 1 year, 825,000 standard contract. Of course, his first NHL standard contract as he hit RFA status. His ELC expired, and he gets the 825,000 for 1 year. Just like Parsonen, it is a prove it year for Tomasino. Both Tomasino and Parsonen are on one-way deals. And they both got something to prove if they want to stick around in Nashville long term. And let's not rule out 2025 trade deadline. If certain things are happening, Tomasino could be traded again. He could resurface his trade bait. You're on a 1 year deal. He could be trade bait again. But for the short term, Tomasino has a lot to play for. He's going to try to earn his way into the starting lineup. I'm glad that the Predators re-signed him. I did not want to see him lost for nothing. I don't think the trade return would have been too great. I think the better option was to re-sign him and get him for $825,000. I mean, that's a good deal. I mean, I can live with that. I can totally live with that. I was expecting that it was very possible that Tomasino was going to get around $1 million or even a little bit more. I thought that was what he was expecting. And I guess the Predators held strong, and they decided to come to an agreement here. And I think it's great for the team to get him for $825, because I still think Tomasino has something to prove and something to give here. And who knows, he could end up having a breakout year and really earning himself a long-term deal with Nashville. I don't think the book is anywhere close to being written on Philip Tomasino. He has a high ceiling. He has ridiculous raw talent. You know, he is produced in waves for this team. It's not like this guy's been a bust at all. He just hasn't gotten a lot of playing time, and some of his intangibles have been questioned. And that's why this year for Tomasino is going to be really big for him. It's going to be really huge. And then if he does end up being with the team for the entire year, he doesn't get traded, he makes it back to next offseason, he'll be an RFA again with arbitration eligibility. So Tomasino is not only playing for his future Preds career, but this year he's playing for his future NHL career as well. And so at age 23, he's still got plenty of his future on the line here. So I'm looking for a really revamped and re-energized Philip Tomasino. He's going to be hungry. He's going to be ready to go, and I can't wait to see that. Those are the best hockey players, the ones that are hungry, the ones that are ready to prove something. So I'm expecting the best version we've ever seen of Tomasino. I really am. I'm really just pumped to see him get this deal. He probably thinks he should have gotten more money, but you know, in the end, he's getting a prove it year. He's getting a year to prove himself. So that is what's most important there. But I like the deal. I love it. That gives the Predators a very strong lineup going into the season. It gives them a really impressive and strong lineup. So gonna toss it over to the rest of the episode, which is going to be with Keener jerseys. They customize the NHL jerseys, including they have a deal with the Predators, one of 11 teams that they work with. I'm going to learn how they got into customizing jerseys and just learn the whole art of what they do, because it's a big market. The younger fan base loves the customized jerseys. You see it on social media all the time, fans sharing their customized jerseys. And so can't wait to talk to Keener, who is the founder of Keener Jerseys. They're based in Winnipeg, Ontario. And we will share with you on that YouTube episode all the ways to look up their awesome products and how to get one of their customized jerseys. A lot of fans have their old school jerseys and they want to get them customized. That's what Keener Jerseys does. So it's going to be a fun guest appearance. We're going to record that tomorrow and put the full episode 246 out on all the podcast platforms tomorrow afternoon, ready for the weekend. So until then, thank you for watching this YouTube clip here on episode 246 of Catfish and Ice with Chad Minton, your host, presented by DraftKings and part of BetterHelp. Thanks.